Hello and welcome to video number 2, where we're going to be talking about watersheds and New Hampshire's water history. So first of all, in any urban area, there are oils and metals and trash and so forth on the roads and on the sidewalks. And as the rain falls down, the rain washes that away. But is it really away? Where is all of that material going? Well, it's going first into the storm drain, and here it also adds maybe fertilizer or oil from cars or pet waste. It's also going into storm drains. And the storm drain ultimately ends up in a water body, and which water body it ends up in depends on what watershed you're in. So this is a picture of what a watershed looks like. Notice the ridge line that runs around the watershed. Now, if a drop of rain were to fall on the outside of this ridge line, then that drop of rain would then flow down to a river on the other side of this mountain. But if it falls on this side of the ridge line, inside the ridge line, then you can picture the drop of water flowing right into one of these little rivers and ultimately into this main river and down into the ocean or a large lake or wherever this river is flowing to. So a watershed is the land that drains to a given point or a stream. And the way you can decide whether a point is in that watershed or outside of the watershed is by picturing if a raindrop were to fall on that point, would that raindrop end up in the river or in the stream or in the pond that you're trying to think about a watershed for? If so, then that point is in the watershed of the river. And coming up in a future video, you'll see a very cool computer program that helps to draw watersheds, that helps to outline the watersheds. So what's pictured here on the right side of the slide is the Merrimack River's watershed. It's a very large watershed. You can see the small map at the very top there. It takes up a large portion of the state. But you might be thinking, well, the Kentucky River watershed is within that watershed. And yes, that's true. Watersheds nest. So the Kentucky River is a tributary of the Merrimack River. It contributes, that's where the word tributary comes from, they have the same root, it contributes flow to the Merrimack River. So the watershed of the Kentucky River is smaller than the watershed of the Merrimack River, and the watershed of the Kentucky River is included in the watershed of the Merrimack River, because a water drop that falls within the watershed of the Kentucky is ultimately also going to be ending up in the Merrimack River. How does this work out sort of scientifically? We call them hydrologic units. So scientists tend to break down the watersheds into smaller chunks and then use these to define exactly where precipitation that falls in that area is going to end up. So for instance, the Merrimack there is that pink area, the Pemigewasset is the yellow, and so on. So they've defined each of these sort of minor hydrologic units to be more specific about exactly where that water is going to end up. And again, notice that some of these are nested as well. The Pemigewasset contributes flow to the Merrimack. The Kentucky contributes flow to the Merrimack. So the pink is just the Merrimack main stem. So what happens to all of that trash and oil and so forth that you see being washed off the streets in your town? Well, it ends up in a small tributary and then it flows eventually into the larger river depending on what watershed it's in. So this led to a lot of pollution in the rivers in this country, and this is a picture of the Nashua River, but the Nashua River was not unusual in that there used to be a crazy amount of pollution in these rivers. So, for instance, in the 60s and 70s, rivers would run red with the dyes from the mills. This was a very common occurrence also in the Merrimack in Manchester. Raw sewage would flow right from people's homes directly into the river with no treatment at all. It was a really sad case, and that's why a lot of towns, they say, are built with their backs to the river, because rivers were smelly, nasty things back when these cities were being constructed. So people got together and said, you know what, this is not right. We want our rivers to be swimmable. We want our rivers to have fish in them. We want our rivers to not smell. It seems like a silly thing to be asking for, a basic thing to be asking for, but regulation was needed. So in 1972, the Clean Water Act was passed, and Congress said that it was the national goal for the discharge of pollutants to be eliminated into navigable waters. And the key point there is navigable waters, meaning waters that are big enough to be passed by a boat. And that regulation has been updated and refined, and leading to more regulations on stormwater and what can exactly flow into stormwater pipes, and so on. But it also led to improved wastewater treatment. So now every community around the country has wastewater treatment, unless they're on septic tanks, but then still the septic tanks would be drained and taken to a local wastewater treatment plant, maybe in the next town over. So this led to not having raw sewage being dumped in the river. Great thing. The rivers started to be beautiful places where we could swim and kayak and fish. And so New Hampshire has a lot of beautiful rivers. We have 38 miles of wild and scenic rivers, designated wild and scenic rivers, so rivers that aren't impaired at all. About 17% of our surface waters have a reported problem, so we're not out of the woods yet. About 226, so the 17% means approximately 226 bodies that have reported problems, and about 36 of those are high priority for action. If you wanted to find out more about which water bodies are impaired and what they're impaired for, there's a really cool website at the EPA, and this is a picture of it. It shows a map of that water body, where it is exactly, and it tells you why it is designated as impaired. So is it pathogens? Is it high nutrients? What is the reason that that water body has problems? All right, well, thank you for watching video number 2, and you can now go take the content quiz. There is a link on the project website at the Google site. There is also a direct link down there at the bottom. Thank you very much.